Readings. I have multiple times of recording this beginning, and then I'm overthinking it. And by the way, I am Jess. For those watching or tuning in while listening as well, I am Jess, and this is the podcast, this version of Jess. I am laughing because my cat's going to be having zoomies in the background if you do hear him run or meow. He's focusing on something. I don't know what it is, but he has a little mission, and I'm going to leave his mission alone while he does that, and I do my own thing. But greetings. I'm laughing because this is like the fourth time I've started this episode, and for some reason I'm getting the jitters and like nervousness for taking myself serious and just going for it, full sending it on filming my second episode ever. It's like I want to get cold feet, but I'm not. I'm just gonna let the jitters happen, so you might hear me stutter here and there. I'm just gonna show up as authentically as I can. And yeah, and shout out to my mama Melissa. She's actually watching the first episode. I gave her some access before it's announced into the world. I'm actually filming the second episode before I announce the first one, so that I just get it under my belt, you know. I don't even know if that's the right saying, but that's okay. I'm having the jitters, and this is just me being nervous and shy. I'm just a shy guy. With that being said, last episode, the pilot episode, the first ever episode of this podcast, at the end I was going to start diving into the connotative meanings of words and how we utilize or abuse words. And yeah, I am thinking about how we're going to dive into this, because I am not doing this with a script. I have some things written down, just like the key points of what I already said, and I do have an example I found on the internet that I will link below. I would like to at least do that now. Let's get the link and save it into my notes so I can provide that in the description of the podcast posting, as well as the YouTube description video wise, because I only have those two for now. I will look into doing Apple as well, and amongst other ways of doing podcasting, probably Amazon. Again, I will have to look into those, but we're starting, you know. I'm not gonna let that stop me from posting from what I do know. And I digressed. I really just digressed, and that's okay. Again, I'm gonna show you this authentic version of how my brain works here and there. Anywho, let's get to it. The connotative meaning. I'm going to explain something that I found via Google, just like, what's the connotative meaning definition? And yeah, the connotative meaning of a word starts with its dictionary meaning, but it expands. Think about this. Not only is it going to be about the dictionary meaning, right? It's also going to imply upon expansion, which will include the surrounding context of how we use a certain word. So, for example, not only will a word have its own definition, it's basically the connotative meaning of what I want to explain to you guys today, and how we use or utilize words. The connotative meaning based on the surrounding words in the sentence itself. So, how are we using the word? You know? And I have some examples. So, think about the word heart. You will think about the biological definition for which the heart stands for. However, you can use it in a sentence and be like, oh my goodness, this person has a heart of gold. Both heart and gold have their own dictionary meanings, but if you put those two in the example that I just did, it's a whole different meaning than what the definition is in a dictionary for those two words alone. And then when you combine those for this person has a heart of gold, it just brings the connotative meaning of this person just being a good or kind person. We're going to say kind. This person has kind-hearted actions, not hearted, but they're just, their actions define them as a kind person because they have a heart of gold. Or like, some might use words like you're an angel, or even just like this feels like home, and then this feels like home could be applied to a person, a place, location, meaning this place feels like home. It brings warmth. That's what that connotative meaning means. And yeah, I've learned while manifesting or setting intentions for the desired reality that I desire, I've learned that the connotative meanings for which we utilize words within these intentions do or are important. We have to be mindful of the connotative ways of which we are saying things, and it's important because a lot of people will say, but they'll use examples like they don't think that what they think matters, when in actuality there's more importance to what we think. We can think these things. For example, I have severe depression. I have severe anxiety. I am not speaking about those mental health thoughts that one might deep dive into. I'm more thinking about how we are being mindful of what we do think, because even with depression, even with anxiety, that's going to manifest into our day-to-day actions. It's just us being mindful of what it is, so we can utilize a tool of empowering ourselves individually. So when we think these certain things, or we think these certain ways, they end up manifesting, and we don't really realize it because it's at a subconscious level. We might not even realize that the way we say things are important in terms of, for example, just the sentence alone of saying, I'm trying to think of an example of how one would manifest this energy into their day-to-day lives, or their day-to-day habits or routines that they have. Let's see. I'm allowing it to come to me as I film this. Let's see. Okay, let's use work for example. There are going to be those that are working for the money itself, because let's face it, our society and the way that economics are right now are at a level for which a lot of people find themselves in the situation of working at a place or in a job that they just are not happy with. And I'm being realistic about that while I speak about this manifestation-wise, because let's be realistic to the economics and societal level of things, and let's just be realistic here. While I speak of that, I need to make sure I'm mindful of that for those that are listening or watching this. I'm just using work as an example to show you how these little thoughts will trinket into our everyday actions, our everyday routines, and then it will end up manifesting itself into the energy for which we are experiencing that level of unhappiness or that level of dread. Notice the word I used in this specific example. Say you're going to work, and then it can just start with that first thought that you ever have about a job. It can just start snowballing. It's like a snowball effect. This is the way manifestations work. the snowball effect. I like that just came to my mind. I have not even used this analogy before, but now that it's in my head. Snowball effect definition: a situation in which one action or event causes many other similar actions or events. So I'm not going to use that as within this example, but think about a snowball rolling down a hill of snow. It started with this small little snowball, and it's going to grow the more down it goes. And think about the hill, you're going down. And it's gonna go faster, and it's gonna grow bigger as we have these thoughts. And a lot of the thoughts are going to be self-deprecating thoughts. It doesn't matter how we think about ourselves when it comes to this snowball effect. It's like our experience, right? This snowball, the first snowball that gets thrown by someone, this is a thought, right? So, and it just ends up rolling down the hill. That's the imagination that I'm going to put out there for people. The snowball is the thought that you were throwing. Man, I don't want to work for this place. Boom. That's the snowball. You already threw it. You threw it out onto the hill, and now it's starting to roll down this hill. Every time it rolls and grows bigger, it's going to be every time that you say it. And then it's going to bring the energy and just growing and growing until you do something about it. Until it reaches the end of that hill, because it's going to become a disaster. You're either going to explode on people because you didn't listen to that initial snowball that you threw. You're allowing this to build up and grow until it explodes at the end of its route. And a lot of us will wait until we explode. A lot of us will wait until that snowball explodes. When that first snowball gets thrown, if we're not mindful of those thoughts, when that first thought comes out, if we're not mindful of those thoughts, they're going to keep spiraling and just being thrown until we pick up that snowball and we actually see it for what it is, because it is coming from us. We're the one throwing the damn thought. We're the one that just threw that out there. It can be about any kind of self-deprecating thought that you have that you threw out into the world. And I say this, we are to be mindful of that first thought as much as we can, or at least when it's on the second or third roll, because we're going to be valid in how we feel. It's just us seeing it for how we feel and then taking the necessary actions or steps towards stopping that snowball from expanding. And once we stop that snowball, we're able to just hold it and allow it to melt in our hands through healthy coping mechanisms. We can still say those thoughts, but let it melt in our hands, rather than throwing it and then it becoming a snowball effect and eventually blowing up in our faces. There are healthy ways to approach allowing the snowball to just melt. We're allowed to feel and express these things. We just got to be mindful of how that snowball transfers. Are we going to allow it to melt? Or are we going to allow it to turn into a snowball effect and then eventually explode in our faces? And knock some people down on the way. Because that happens. That really happens. And I feel with that example, let's think about our manifestations. With that analogy in mind, the snowballs that we throw are not just our thoughts. It will be the consistent actions towards what we do in our day-to-day lives. Are the snowballs we're throwing, are they going to be towards our desired reality, or are we just spitballing and letting the snowball effect roll and grow bigger until we blow up on someone because we're showing up to something that we don't want to do? Are we doing the consistent actions toward our desired reality? Or are we just rolling and just putting more friction and like all this anger in towards ourselves, and then we're gonna end up blowing up ourselves? Like, and then when we do blow up, right, we have to think about how that alone is something that was caused, or that was just a chain reaction of our own actions. And that's why 2 words I would like to bring to you today to think about when you are in these interactions or conversations with other people. Do you find yourself responding or reacting to them? Are you responding in the sense of actually communicating, or are you reacting and blowing up on people with the assumption of what they're going to say before they even say the sentence that they're going to say? And this is why I do a lot of active listening in any kind of conversation I have. I'll just sit there and do active listening so that someone can say what they are saying in the conversation, and then I respond while reiterating some of what they say to show them that, hey, I am paying attention to what you said, versus reacting to someone and just being explosive about what they just said to me, because that then will not allow them the space to be able to conversate or have a healthy conversation with me. So far, with this connotative analogy of the snowball effect, let's go back to connotative meanings. I will utilize words such as, I know you caught on to this, and if you didn't, I'll just reiterate it in my own way. I said I will allow myself. For the longest time, I always would say, I'm going to let myself. I'm going, and then to let myself. As if, let's just look up these words, okay? Let definition. Going to definition. And then we're going to do allow definition. You will see a lot of people that do inspirational quotes. They will say let into it, not realizing the connotative meaning into this. Hold on. We're gonna get there. So I'm going to, so that's the act alone. It just, we'll talk about, hold on, I feel like I'm using let me make sure I'm doing this the route of how to explain the connotative meanings, and I'm going to leave this raw and unedited so you can see the way my brain processes and works as I go. Ooh, that's another one I want to do. The word work. Hold on. I got distracted, y'all. My ADD. What's up? Allow synonyms. There's a word I am trying to think of. Okay, this is what I was trying to think of. So the connotative meaning behind let means you're trying to give yourself permission. Like, that's the vibe I get from that word let. And then whereas allow, you are already doing it, you know? There's no, of course, allow, it says give permission to do something, but when I use the word allow, it's just, it allows me to give permission without having to say permission, right? Whereas let, the definition is just to not prevent or forbid. And then the literal word is allowed in the word let. So, like, I'm going to let myself. Let's shorten that connotative meaning to just allow. I allow myself. I'm going to let myself is a lot more of a mouthful than saying I allow myself. Because the more words we put into it, the more energy that we are exerting out of our system to even set the intention, right? So make it more simple for yourself. Think about the meanings of the words, the connotative meanings of the words. When you say I'm going to let myself, it feels like you have to like face yourself inwards and like decide if you're going to let yourself. Whereas allow, when I'm using that word for myself, it just goes with the flow. It's very ease. Speaking of going with the flow, I will be releasing an article called Go With The Flow. As soon as this episode releases, I'm going to release an article that I just wrote called Go With The Flow. I have 2 paragraphs written so far, but announcement. Anyhow. Whew. It's like when people use the word work. I'm going to work for it. No, just allow the ease to come through. I'm going to flow with it, I'm going to go with the flow rather than the forceful action working. That's why I always, when I used to talk about like certain roles I would do at like the bar last year and like the movie theater and even other positions that I have, I would always say, hey, I will be doing my position today. I didn't say I'm going to go to work because with work alone, it just the way that I would it's the way that I would personally use the word work. It meant that I was forcing myself to go and do it rather than it being of ease. And of course, that's not going to apply to everyone. This is why I'm making an informative video about what connotative meanings mean behind the word that you use. It really is to each and every one person of how they utilize a word. And that's why we're going to just segue right into utilize, use, abuse. And this will not just be connotative meanings, but I will talk about it. So let's think about it. Utilize, use, and abuse. This can be in regards to tools. It can even be in regards to words and how we speak about them. So, tools. Or this can even be applied to your relationships and your connections. I started reframing the way that I word sentences. Everything I say is actually mostly thought about until I figure out the habit that I'm using the word, such as that. Yeah, let's get to the meanings of the words. Because use and abuse are pretty much the same thing. When I would make certain videos for my spirituality TikTok account, I will link that below if you ever want to check it out. But I am very mindful about how I word certain actions, how I word the intentions towards manifestations. And I am very mindful of how I word experiences or examples that I can utilize while informing people based on whatever the video is about. And with that being said, utilize is to make practical and effective use of. And then you got use, which is take, hold, or deploy as a means of accomplishing a purpose or achieving a result. And then abuse, it means use something to bad effect or for a bad purpose. So pretty much misuse. And the reason I bring these words up is a lot of people, if you pay attention to the way that you word your sentences when you're speaking to someone, when you're in a conversation, or when you are speaking about your experience, and then also when you are speaking about the desired reality for which you set intentions for, you begin to become super aware of how important the connotative meanings are to your everyday, day-to-day life situations, circumstances, understandings of life. The awareness will be so profound once you make that connection, once you make that awareness, because it's so mind-boggling to how precise and specific wording can be in your day-to-day usage, in your day-to-day communications. Because the way you communicate, I really believe this, the way that you communicate is super important to the way that you are going to be aware and understand the way that the world communicates. It's the way that we are able to connect with one another and understand how someone is thinking based on the way that Rocky is here to say hello. But it even goes deep down to, not to get into a psychoanalyzation mode, but the way that someone uses a certain word or utilizes their vocabulary will show you the way that they view the world or the way that they view themselves. Mostly the way that they view themselves, and then that alone is going to show you how they view the world. The way that someone utilizes the connotative meanings behind any type of sentence will show you that alone. And this is actually one of the keys to how I either relay or relate to people. I am actually saying this out loud for the first time. Relay or relate. I love this. That just came out for the first time, and I'm thinking that out loud for the first time. So it goes down to that. When you start to understand the connotative meanings of words, you're going to be able to not intentionally psychoanalyze the way people view the world, but how they view themselves, and how you're going to either relate to them or relate to them. So relay means just being engaged with one another and relaying that information of whatever the conversation's about. Whereas relating will allow you to make a connection. And this is how I actually psychoanalyze my conversations with like certain drivers of my rideshare experiences, and I'm able to analyze and see how they speak about things, and then that alone will allow me to either connect with them or just relay information to them that's relatable to them, you know. And yeah, I feel like we talked about a lot during this 30-minute episode so far. Utilize, use, abuse. I did not digress from that. I just started focusing back on connotative meanings that felt important in the way that wanted to go. So utilizing is more so as a resource. Using and abusing is more so, it's like with knowledge. We can either utilize the knowledge as a tool, or we could use or abuse it as a harmful way against ourselves or others. And that's a lot of why I say connotative meanings matter, because people will use or abuse knowledge by either gatekeeping it, using it to harm others or themselves. It just really depends on the circumstance or situation that the knowledge is being experienced in. And that's why I say utilization too, is because that's more of a tool route. That's using it as a resource. It's like utilizing it as the resource that it is, whereas using and abusing this information just brings harm or isn't used as a tool, whereas it could be. Yeah, I feel like those aspects of what I really wanted to focus on mainly for this episode have been expressed in the way that it was expressed. I want to read those examples of connotative. It's from bestwriting.com. The link will be below, but it says, what is connotative or connotation in writing? So let's use the Shakespeare example. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? You see how he utilizes the word summer's day to compare. Think about negative connotations. I am feeling blue. Oh my goodness, I'm wearing blue too. While I talk. Ooh, I didn't think they would use an example like this, but at least my podcast is explicit. But an example they use is, don't talk like a bitch, which just mean they're trying to describe a mean person, but we don't use that word when comparing people. Oh. A neutral connotation that they give is, I'm a movie geek, which means you just love watching movies. But yeah, they just talk about how literature can be filled with examples of connotation. I know this is coming from a literal sense, whereas I'm speaking of a manifestation sense. While I search what I'm saying, connotative understandings of word will also allow you to understand the way you intend said desires or said desired reality, because you're pretty much trying to envision it. And this is how we're going to segue and why it's so important. We will word certain intentions for those that do manifestation or for those that write down goals. It really matters how we write down a goal. For example, this is a very important example. I would put an idea placed on a location. So I had actually did this actual desired intention before without realizing the connotative meaning matters. And I feel like I should express this before going on to the segue of manifesting and the desired intentions. But what was I going to say? When it comes to putting an idea on a desired reality, like, for example, you can say something broad like, I want to live in this state for this specific reason. And I want or I need. No. We're going to say I desire. When writing your manifestations or goals, do not write I want or I need, because that then becomes attachments to the desired results or desired reality. You will become attached to the idea that you put onto the desired reality. So I want to move to damn it, I'm still rewording this. I desire to live in Washington. How do I do this? Trying to think of a new idea, not one that I've lived through. I desire living in Washington so that I can make all these friends. How about that? There we go. So that I can make all these friends. You are then attaching the idea of making all these friends to Washington, but when you and then say you show up to Washington, because you have this expectation that you attach to the desired reality, you will be faced with feeling a certain level of disappointment. Meaning, you will find that you attached making friends to a certain state when you don't have to have a certain state to make friends. And let me bring this to you. You have also attached making friends without considering the energy that comes along with that, because you are most likely desiring from a place, wanting or needing from a place for which does not allow you to have the openness in order to connect. And because of that, I can say this. I once set something with wanting and needing. I was like, you know what? I want a lot of friendships that I can turn to and blah blah blah. I don't remember what it was, but when I did that, I didn't realize the way that I worded this desired reality, the way that I had worded it originally, was more so from a want and a need that I was not allowing myself to have with myself. And then that turned into a snowball effect of making connections or being close to people that did not allow me to feel good about myself. I would connect with people out of desperation rather than realizing I am to connect with my first, and then that will allow the space and openness to receiving connections that were aligned to what I'm aligning to. Whew. That was a mouthful. I will just keep faith that that was received the way I was intending it to be understood. Because when I speak about a lot of these things, I almost get worried that people, this is just a worry that I probably shouldn't even worry about. I get worried that I will not be able to communicate the level for which I think, because, and this is probably not a mindful worry, but I get worried that like the rate at which I communicate will sometimes be at certain levels for which people aren't going to be able to connect with, but I try to communicate in a way that is of ease rather than being confused when you listen to me speak about these things. But that's one of my desires, is I am able to do it with ease of understanding, of awareness, and explain it in a way where it's going to connect to other people's level of understanding. Because not everyone's going to have the experience for which I learned this understanding through. But I can still do my best to provide a way of ease of trying to meet people, wherever they do communicate, wherever they do understand, wherever they are open to understanding, because it really is about people that are open to understanding or open to listening, open to being aware that not everything is what they once knew it to be. And yeah, this is just me touching connotative meanings so far. I'm sure it will expand as I go, but I wanted to at least touch the subject of it, and begin that conversation rather than gatekeeping this knowledge that I have that others can utilize for the betterment of their living. I'm excited because, oh my goodness, I can share this knowledge with the world and not just keep it to myself. I'm excited because I'm finally creating the content for which I desire to see that's out there. And this is my ending this episode for you. Allow yourself to create what you desire to see out in the world. Whether it's a book, whether it's a show, whether it's a comic book, whether it's a game, whether it's a video, whether it's a website, whether it's a movie, whether it's a picture, whether it's a new sport, whether it's anything blank that you have in your mind, whatever came to your mind, allow yourself to be the person that creates it, because you are envisioning it for a reason. You are the reason that it is going to exist, because you are able to imagine it to be so. Woo-wee. We're gonna end the podcast at that. My son and I, if you can't see, it's Rocky saying goodbye. We appreciate you and we're grateful to you. Thank you. We love you so much, as always. Much love to you in your journey. Again, I'm sending the ASL sign of I love you to the camera for those that are just listening. Thank you. As always, much love to you in your journey. Again, this is the same episode. When I was the duration of the time between yesterday or last night when I filmed the first part of this episode to now, I had all these connotative meanings that were wanting to be compared as an example for anyone that may be watching. I don't want to think that I'm overthinking this or trying to add more than what's already there. However, I'm just gonna sit here and create, One of the connotative meanings between words that I wanted to speak about when it comes to manifesting in general, or your desired reality, is when you speak about something like, oh, this is the work example, the word work that was wanting to come through yesterday. I just didn't think about it until way after the fact. I was like, oh, that's what was trying to come out for the podcast. So the word work, for example, instead of you just saying the word work when you are creating something, for example, a couple of years ago, even a year ago, I used to say, oh, I need to go work on this thing when talking about a passion project like this, for example, or oh, I need to go work on this drawing, I need to go work on this puzzle, I need to go work on this blank. Whereas I've been focusing on that word and implementing a change of how I word this specific sentence when I am going to invest my energy into a passion project or invest my energy into something that I love doing, into something that I love being, because it's with my whole being, Instead, I've been implementing the word create. Instead of saying, oh, I'm going to go work on something, I will then say, because look, when you say I'm going to work, that connotative meaning for myself at least, and this is why I'm changing the way I speak about the actions that I am doing, I have noticed a connotative meaning for me when I used to say this specific way of living is I would, anytime the way I would word it meant that I'm forcing myself to do it. I am making myself do it rather than going with the flow of when I feel like doing something, when that inspired action comes through. And a lot of people confused being dedicated or being or making yourself do something is what's going to what's the word? Is what matters to a project that you are creating, a project that you are allowing to be birthed into life, right? A lot of times it's like trying to grow a seed faster than the rate at which it grows. And a lot of times the seed analogy wanted to come through last night and I didn't speak about it until now. I'm going to speak about it now because it's wanting to come through as well, but we're going to finish with this connotative meaning. A sentence that I started implementing out of the importance of realizing, oh, what I say matters, how I am approaching what I'm creating, how I'm creating, So with that being said, instead of saying I'm going to work on something through the forceful nature of saying what I said previously, I then started implementing that change and allowing myself to say, I'm going to allow myself to create towards this project. And then for some reason I am channeling that I'm to say this, but disregard the but. For some reason I am being called or channeling to say this itself. Hello, greetings. I can't let you on the desk right now because I actually have this cooling off. It's some broccoli jitters soup. Did I just do that? Oh my god. I almost did. Hey, I'm focusing right now. You're a beautiful baby. For those that can't see and are just tuning in listening wise, I have a lovely little baby that tried to come into the picture. Shoot. I'm allowing it to come back to me. But instead of doing that forceful nature of wording sentences or actions the way I used to, I now have implemented this change. It's an everyday, consistent effort that you dedicate the energy towards. And okay, it finally came back what I was going to say. But a lot of times, another connotative, this is very important. I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is very important, that channeling that's coming through. Connotative meaning such of how we word our experiences. A lot of times when and I say this as someone who used to speak like this, until I realized how important these connotative meanings affect our day-to-day lives and living. I used to be someone that had that victim mentality mindset where I would say, oh my gosh, this is happening to me, instead of the connotative saying that we could implement, which is this is happening for me. When we say that something is happening to us, you'll notice how often someone says it once you become aware of this, and then you can see whether they have that victim mentality mindset versus the mindset of seeing life for what it is. And I'm not speaking from a wrong or right mindset. I don't believe in right or wrong. I just believe there's a balance to things, whether it's light versus shadows. And it's how we approach it, it's how we utilize both as a tool rather than abusing it or using it to harm others. That's just my morality. But you'll see what kind of mindset someone is in when you hear them use the word to versus and or for. So I'll just be like, I have to remind myself, even now, I want to go into that loop of the victim mentality when I'm having a really bad day. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, why am I the one that this is happening to? Rather than seeing it from a mindset that's going to provide a more healthy approach during the life experience that a lot of us humans experience. And instead, I can just I can hold this healthy mindset of that, just implementing the change of the why is this happening to me to this is happening for me. What can this show me? And I try my best not to turn everything into a lesson, because you can have a psychosis from that alone. It's more so because, here's the thing too, I feel like I need to add this into this episode. It's like, you know, people can come into a psychosis from the negative loops that are just repeating in their mind or their life. You can get into a psychosis of the healthy, what's good for you. You can focus so much into that you're not allowing yourself to feel the shadow for which is needed to be felt, to hold that balance, because you can either be too on the spectrum of shadows and allowing that to just be more chaotic than the balance for which can bring the calm. You can also be too on the light spectrum, where you're not allowing yourself to see the reality for which things are. You can get too delusional. I like to say, this is where I'm like aware of it. I'm like, you know, be delulu till it's true, but that can also enter you into a psychosis if you are not aware of it. This side too. That's why there's a balance to the light and shadows, why we honor both, and that allows the balance when we utilize them as tools rather than harming others or harming yourself and abusing it for what it is. And I say this while being mindful that we're always going to be inside of some type of loop. Is being aware of the loop and how we can either exit it, and if we're going to repeat it, at least utilize it as a tool. I like that it segued from that to this. But again, keep in mind how someone is just saying those words. If they're saying this is happening to me versus this is happening for me, a lot of times, that's why I said that whole psychosis part of the whole, everything can be a lesson if you allow it to be. Just don't get trapped into, notice the word I use, don't get trapped into the psychosis for which any loop can bring into our lives, any cycle that we find ourselves within, I should say, any cycles that we find ourselves within. Yeah. And let's now segue into the seeds. And a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit when we planted a seed for a project to sprout. Meaning we discredit ourselves and be like, oh my gosh, this is not happening inside this certain time frame that I have it for, right? It's not happening the way I had predicted it to, and that's because we put expectations on it. And that's how I'm going to end this episode. I'm going to allow you to be excited for what I have to say in this next episode, which is going to be, when it comes to your desired realities and the effort/energy that you are investing into yourself or the actions towards this desired reality, are we being intentional with our actions? Are we holding expectations with our actions? Intentional versus expectations. Or let's think of how I can word this. Intentions versus expectations. Or expectations versus intentions. I'm going to do expectations versus intentions for this next episode that we're going to be releasing into the world. Probably going to record it now while it's on my mind so it's all fresh. I appreciate you for watching the second episode. I needed to allow the time of the extra 13 minutes to insert into this video for this specific episode of this podcast. I appreciate you for tuning in as I channel for you. I love you so much. As always, much love to you and your journey. Oh, testing. This is a blooper. We're just testing the mic. Of course, I'm just using the computer's laptop, this is bloopers, but I'm using the camera in my laptop, so the quality is just gonna be this quality that you see right now for now, but we're gonna continue. This is the second ever episode of this version of Just podcast. I'm glad this is bloopers because I'm getting it out of my system. I love when it starts stimming. Anywho, I am excited because this is still the bloopers. I just want to hear everything as I go, and now I need one of those film things. The clapper. Second testing, because I realized the first blooper testing it was not what I needed it to be in order to hear it clearly. So we're probably just going to use the microphone off the laptop and go from there. So, testing. Greetings, it's Jess, and we're on the my cat is zoomies. We're on the podcast, this version of Jess. Bloopers for sure.